Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for Red Ranger Becomes an Adventurer. I think this is episode 8. I forgot to look. It's either 7 or 8. I'm pretty sure it's 8. But this was a great episode. Maybe my favorite, or at least one of my favorites of the series. It's funny because in last week's review I said how I would love to see an episode that was basically just a straight up flashback as if it was a Sentai episode. And we basically got that, which is really funny timing. I swear to God I didn't plan it that way. There is still part of me that selfishly would love to see another one like this, where it was just more traditional Sentai episode where you had more of the other cast involved. Because this actually did feel like an episode you'd watch in Sentai, where they focus primarily on one character's story, and we of course did see the other members of the team. But I would like to see one where we get to see the team interact more. Just selfishly, I'm like, I want more. I know I shouldn't, but this was still really great. You have kind of the narrative device of him talking to our Amen Rider. What is an Amen Rider? I can't believe how long it took me to understand that that was just a pun on Kamen Rider when they literally just removed a letter. But anyway, and they're talking, and we get a little bit more backstory about her. As it turns out, the villain guy we learned about last week we're going to be facing actually used to be friends with her. And so she's wondering how she's going to go into this conflict now that they're enemies. You know, a very classic Sentai and anime trope. And Red initially brings up like, hey, I used to have a frenemy just like that. And initially I thought it was just kind of a one-off little bit, kind of like when he mentions other past episodes, and we flash over to it for a few seconds. But then she's like, no, tell me more, tell me more. And then we just start watching Grease. And then we actually get like a full-on flashback episode narrated by him about this backstory, which was really great. And the whole thing was about his backstory of being adopted into this family, and his adoptive brother effectively was one that stuck up for him when he was kind of made fun of, and they developed this bond, and he goes through their history and friendship and their life, and then how it eventually turned, because all the while his brother was building resentment to him because it seemed like his family, his father, his sister, was favoring Red more. And it's kind of funny because all throughout it, you can see Red kind of being oblivious. Although it is funny too because during the flashbacks, whenever something like that happens, like when they were about to celebrate his achievement, but then they're tending to Red because he collapsed from exhaustion, or when he was like playing soccer with Red or whatever, he doesn't have like that stern look on his face or anything. You don't see his fist clenched. His fist clenched. He just has this complete blank expression on his face. But then like when they flash back to it, you do this red eyes black dragon thing. Thanks, Yug. And I'm like, I think this is meant to be a scene where he's being resentful, but at the same time, he's such a blank expression on his face. I can't read him at all. But he's basically building this anger towards him all throughout, that he's getting more attention. And it's funny because Red is so oblivious to it. Like, the further you get into the episode, the more obvious it is that he's bothered by the attention Red is getting. But he's like, well, there was this one time that they totally chose me over him, but then everything was fine with us and we're best friends forever. That was just kind of funny, like how utterly oblivious he was to it. But he becomes like the bond breaker, which is kind of based off of a piano because that's his thing, as he plays piano. And it was very much your classic sort of Sentai rival feeling character like a Guy Zorg, or more notably something like Stacy. But you know what I mean, like that Ranger-esque villain character that's got a personal story. And he ultimately is used by the villains and saved, and then they make this funny bit about the fact that he turned evil like 13 more times. Like anything ever happened, it would cause a trigger for him. Like his sister would be like, hey Red, do you want a piece of gum? And he was like, bond breaker! I thought that was really funny. I couldn't think of a Sentai situation that was exactly like that, but it did remind me a bit of Stacy. Not because he like heel turned back and forth, but because his redemption arc was so drawn out. It was so generic anyway. It wasn't bad. I liked Stacy, but it was a pretty generic Sentai story for that. And it felt like every 2 episodes, him and Zenkaiser would have a conversation where he'd be like, I think you can turn good, you can do it. And he'd be like, you really think so? No. And we just did that every 2 episodes. It's like, crap, or get off the pot, dude. That kind of reminded me of that, but I thought it was a funny bit. And it was just kind of cool to visit this episode where we were 90% of it in that Sentai world, and did give me a feel for what it would feel like to have an animated Sentai. And it's funny because the hook of this is how unique it is to have this character in this fantasy world, which is what I like, but at the same time, I would totally just watch a straight up Sentai anime that didn't have the unique hook. I think a spin-off would be really cool to see. And again, like I said at the top, I would still love to see one more like this, where we get to see more of the team's interactions, because this was primarily focused on Red, which makes sense. I did like too how when he was talking about the origins of, oh, this was the first day I transformed into Kizuna Red, and Amen Rider asks him like, well, how did that happen? He's like, that's not what the point of the story is. I thought that was really funny, but also I do want to know. I really want to know how he was recruited, how the others were recruited, and that would have been an interesting element to come into play too, of his friendship with these characters, because he had his best friend brother, but then maybe he also could have been jealous that he wasn't spending time with him anymore because he had his new Sentai friends. All that aside, burying the lead here though, there's another big thing that happened in this episode, and somebody in my Boom Boonger series review, I don't remember if it was the series review or the community post, was asking if I'd seen this episode because it was something that wasn't done in the anime, and I don't know whether they were talking about this storyline being more expanded, because I know I've been told before by Crimson Red that they don't always do that thing where they flash over to Sentai episodes, that's anime exclusive, or if he was talking about this major Ghostbusters, I always do that, GoBusters cameo. Like, that was fantastic to see. It's a little fan service Easter egg, but it was totally cool to see, especially since it's from my personal favorite Sentai of all time. So, in general, even setting the Ghostbusters aside, I loved this episode for what it was, but that was just the icing on the cake, and that was really great. And the episode also ends on a bit of a cliffhanger where they get, speaking of Yu-Gi-Oh!, they get trapped into cards like Yugi's grandpa. That was a thing that happened, right? I haven't seen the original Yu-Gi-Oh! In a long time, but nice little cliffhanger to end on there. But yeah, great episode. It really was cool to see basically an animated Sentai episode with a little GoBusters Easter egg on top of it. But anyways, guys, let me know what you thought as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for all my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.